Hey everyone, Brandflix here, back with another Eternal Return video. In today's video, we're going to talk about 4 characters that weren't really adjusted that great or not at all in the recent 1.1 patch. And these characters are going to be Cathy and Daniel, who weren't touched at all, Barbara, who in my opinion was nerfed incorrectly, and Hyejin, who is somebody who was supposedly nerfed, but I'm pretty sure was actually buffed, so she'll be even stronger for this next patch. So if you're looking for characters that will carry you very well in the new ranked season, and you just want to have a more solid time, these characters should serve you pretty well. Obviously there are nuances, and I'll try and explain them in this video, and hopefully it will really help you out just understanding the game more in case you see these characters in your games, which you probably will, because a lot of them are very popular. So to start off, we'll talk about Cathy. If you guys have watched the previous videos, you'll know that Cathy is a character that I talked about before. She is very strong, very mobile, very high burst, a lot of crowd control, and very safe. So how would you play Cathy in the squad setting? Cathy is a character who used to require very high precision because you relied very highly on landing all of your abilities and also weaving your autos attacks very smoothly to kill somebody. But with squads in play, that aspect of her is a bit more toned down, if only because you can now rely on your teammates to add the damage that you would have otherwise missed trying to get a good engage, which would involve queuing in, ulting, maybe dual sword skilling and chicken on the way in to dash even further. In the past, that would have been a terrible idea because you would have lacked way too much damage to take out somebody, but now, since you have a backline, you have a tank, you have another melee assassin coming in with you, you can now rely on them to run in and take people down for you instead of relying on yourself for everything, which is very important because Cathy does a lot of damage even outside her perfect combo, which you'll see a lot in the gameplay in the background. So you really want to try her both dual swords and dagger. They play very similarly but also very differently. In my opinion, dual sword is way higher damage, a lot riskier, but you'll definitely notice a damage difference. And dagger is way more suited for if you're going like the very stealthy assassination style. Something to remember is that if you are at level 2 or higher dagger skill, you can actually stealth outside enemies' audio range. If you guys don't know, dagger skill makes a very audible noise if you're within audio range. But if you're outside and you move fast enough, you can actually stealth out and then surprise people with the perfect suture, which obviously is something that would guarantee you a teamfight win because of how much damage a suture into ultimate combo does. So be aware of that difference between dual swords and dagger. I would personally choose dagger if you're solo queuing, but dual swords is also very, very good in general because you can solo carry with the damage alone. So let's move on to Daniel. Daniel is kind of the attack power, single target, much more all-in version of Cathy. He does way more damage, way more easily, way more consistently than Cathy does to one person and one person only. His damage is not suited for AoE, which would make you really think that he's not good for squads, which goes to show just how over-tuned his numbers are when it comes to assassinating one target. So obviously, I don't think I got the video up because it got corrupted, but I had a game where I played Daniel. It was kind of rough in the beginning, but then I started assassinating people non-stop, and it was very messy. Like I would E in, hit a Q, auto them like twice, hit R, and that person would burn everything getting away, which removes them from the fight, which is fine because as Daniel, I'm not adding that much value to a team fight. I'm, again, very low crowd control, very low utility, very low AoE. So the fact that I'm going to be removing somebody way more important than me from each fight is really good, just because you're taking it to like a 1v1 and allowing your teammates to 2v2, and hopefully your teammates can 2v2. So obviously, if you think about that, it's a bit like you rely on your team, which a lot of people might not want to do, but I promise you, if you play Daniel, you'll understand just how smooth he is to play and assassinate with. Like, it's crazy how much damage that guy does for very little reason and very little effort. He is very squishy, so be very careful. You're not going to be doing anything silly like Cathy does, where you're just all in by yourself and you live at the end of the fight. You have to play off your team, or at least distract somebody and surprise them so that you don't instantly die from being focused. And even if you're instantly focused, that's what your ultimate is for. You can just go invulnerable for like 2.5 seconds, which gives your team time to catch back up. So he's a very safe character, very ratty. At the very worst, you can play placement or maybe steal kills, and you'll probably do well in the squad solo environment or squad solo queue environment. So moving on to Barbara, who is a character that was nerfed and definitely nerfed, but in my opinion was not nerfed correctly. So what do I mean by this? Barbara has a combo Or rather, it all lies within Barbara's ultimate ability. If you guys don't know, Barbara's ultimate ability empowers her spells to do unique things. Her Q lets you spawn a turret, which explodes your previous turret, and explodes at the location you plant the new turret at and teleports you there. Her W basically becomes a spammable ability with no cooldown, so you just laser people over and over again, the target and your turret. And then her E is like an AoE aura that does a lot of damage and gives you a better shield and movement speed. So the combo I'm talking about is going to be based on her ultimate plus turret. If you look at the patch notes, you'll notice that there nerfs her turret's durability and attack power, but this combo, while it does rely a little bit on her turret attack power, it is almost entirely based on the spam you do, because Barbara's ultimate resets her basic cooldowns, which means that you can press the turret, press E, which gains the aura on both of you, press W, press ultimate, press Q, and then do the entire thing again, which means that you're going through 2 basic rotations very quickly, and not many characters in this game can really withstand that, not even tanks. So with Amp Drone, which wasn't nerfed, and then with all of her weapons and items which also weren't nerfed, you can really take people down very quickly, not only a single target, but entire teams if they're not respecting your turret's AoE and your AoE. So a very powerful character. You should definitely try her out. My friend actually doesn't like her very much, so every time I pick her, he's like, oh, you're cursing me. And I think I'll have a clip from his channel when we played games earlier where I just one-shot people over and over again, just so you can get an example of how disgusting this damage is. And keep in mind again, this damage is barely touched. Like I think total, you're losing maybe like 8% skill amp from this combo, which is nothing when you consider how many spells I'm throwing out. So really keep that in mind. You should try out Barbara, learn the combo. There's a bit of finesse when it comes to that ultimate combo, because you have to wait like 5 frames for the E to come out after you place the turret. But trust me, it's very fun. Like I rarely have more fun on a character than I do on Barbara when I'm really feeling it. So the last character we'll talk about is going to be Hyejin. So Hyejin is a character that a lot of people are assuming is nerfed, but I don't think they understand why she's nerfed. And the reason why I say that is because I don't think she's nerfed at all. I think she's actually buffed, which is terrifying. So what did they do to Hyejin? They made her passive fear scale more harshly with levels, which means that you now have to put points in to get back to the original point you're at, and the cap out is still the same as the previous patch's cap out. The reason why they did this is because Hyejin's weren't putting points into her passive, so effectively this makes it so that you're now having a 1-point skill tax if you want the previous fear. I've been told that Hyejins don't really care about the fear anymore because there's no more true combos you can do that are reliable. So it's not really a big nerf to nerf her fear because Hyejins don't really care. They're relying on her Q, which is an insanely short cooldown now. Like it's actually incredible how short that cooldown is if you hit it. It's like 60% reduction on a base 3-second cooldown ability, which means that like if you hit it, it's a 1.2 second cooldown ability, which means that you're essentially just throwing skill shots nonstop if you hit it, which has a very healthy base ratio and all this. And they didn't touch that at all. They didn't touch Shuriken, they didn't touch her amp ratios, they just nerfed her fear a little bit, I believe. I'll put the patch notes back up just in case I'm spreading misinformation, but the main thing is that they nerfed her fear, and I think the slow in her W, which is irrelevant because you're gonna be hitting the slow most of the time anyways. So why do I think she's buffed? So if you guys have played Hyejin back before the 1.0 release, you would know that when her R explodes, there's this AoE that comes out that applies fear and damage. And if you played Hyejin the 1.0 release, you might be going, where'd that go? It turns out that that range was incredibly melee. Like melee to the point that I think you'd have to be within like a nunchuck or an axe auto attack range to get that damage off, which made it completely too unsafe to actually ever hit, purely because Hyejin's a squishy mage. Like she can't be in melee like that and live. So what they've done, which is why I call it a buff, is that they've increased that range back to matching where her omens spawn. So now you can get that ultimate damage and fear off much more reliably, which means that they've actually added damage to her kit that you would never have gotten to begin with. So what did they trade off? They traded off 1 skill point worth of tax, which is essentially like 30 damage tops on her E or W, for hundreds of more damage on her ult pop and a much more reliable fear on the entire team if she positions well. Hyejin was already doing very well in Korea. She had like 5 players in top 100, and she was almost on par with the Adinas besides number 1 which is really insane because Hyejin's a character with great mobility, great damage, great crowd control, essentially all things that a top mage would have, and somehow she wasn't touched at all in a significant way. So keep an eye on her. I think Vampiric Bloodline wasn't nerfed nearly as hard for mages as it was for AD casters, which means that Hyejin's best augment really wasn't touched at all. So yeah, obviously all of these things are subject to change. They could release hotfixes, new patches, and all this, which could change the balance state at any moment. But this is just my first impressions before the patch hits. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Have a good night or day wherever you are. Please let me know if you have any other recommendations for videos, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.